It's so great to be here with you today to talk about this important topic of early workforce impacts of AI to intelligent transportation systems. Our goal here is that we're really looking at how transformation is happening in transportation. It's about people, really, not only the technology. Technology is sometimes considered the easy part, where the real challenge is preparing the workforce and the organizational structure for the transformation that we're anticipating. We're going to need to see new skills, new behaviors, new ways of working, and new organizational structures. These are all so essential to the readiness and adoption of AI in intelligent transportation systems, industry that we all work in. So we'll just jump right into it. We have a great panel. I am very humbled to be able to moderate this panel of experts that are working both in AI and in ITS. And this panel or this webinar is part of our workforce development community of practice. So I'll have some slides to share just briefly to bring you up to speed about the workforce development community of practice. But first, I want to introduce who we have here on our panel today. So as Victoria mentioned, I'm Virginia Lingham. I am a Senior Vice President and National Lead of ITS within WSP. I'm also a co-chair or co-lead with ITS America's Workforce Development Community of Practice. I'm here with Dara Wheeler, who's Acting Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer with Caltrans, and she is my co-chair for the Community of Practice as well. We also have Erika Kemp, who serves as the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation Division with Texas Department of Transportation. So welcome, Erika. Jennifer Holmes is with us too as well. She is the Cities and Transportation and Infrastructure Lead with Accenture. Also, we have Rebecca Middleton, who's a Quality and Risk Specialist in AI with Cambridge Consultants. And last but not least, Jim Broderick is a Policy Analyst with ITS America. So let me share my screen real quick, and I will share a little bit about what we're doing with the Workforce Development Community of Practice. This is within ITS America's structure of committees, working groups, and then there are, I believe, 3 communities of practice. The Workforce Development Community of Practice, this is our second year. It started in 2024. So we're still growing and building. Our top priorities within the community of practice are to create these pathways for individuals to contribute and benefit from ITS as they go along their workforce development journey, and then to develop a skilled and cultivate a workforce that meets industry demands, fosters innovation, and expands opportunities in the transportation sector. And so absolutely, artificial intelligence, AI, and the needs around that, and all the different aspects of AI fit squarely within things that we're looking at within the workforce development community of practice. We do things like send out surveys. And so if you see these, please respond. We do look at all of the inputs that we receive in the surveys. Some of the things that we've heard so far are things like that they want to see more efforts in bringing in vendors along the journey, or we've gotten comments about how to retain employees. And this comment, while building a strong workforce is important, one of our greatest struggles is the retention of employees and they want to know what others are doing to have success in that area. That's just one example. We also went out and collected some videos to hear more about everyone's workforce journeys. We get involved with different ITS America releases, such as the Workforce Gaps and Future of ITS document that was released last year. The Blueprint for Transportation Technology, which you'll hear about shortly, as well as the policy principles, which others on this panel are also involved with. In every meeting, we have a spotlight, which I think is really exciting to look back at and see who we're talking to. Our next meeting is going to be on September 25th. So if you're interested in the community of practice and this topic, please join us. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca to share more about what she's been working on preparing the guide for the next steps for AI implementation. Rebecca?
Thank you so much, Virginia. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here to talk about this. It is a really, really interesting subject, and it's one that I'm coming across at the moment so much with how workforce is being impacted. And when I first started within policy, I worked with the UK government And when the AI policy came across my desk, I was really surprised that this one policy was the one that had the most contact with various stakeholders across the whole business from different areas, from different disciplines, more so than any other policy that I've ever been involved in. So it really shows the impact that AI has upon the workforce. And that's mainly because AI really has lots of human in the loop interactions with it throughout the whole process of it, whether that's through development, whether that's through oversight of it, whether that's through looking at the outputs as well. It really touches upon the workforce in various ways and very different means. So it's something that's really, really important that we look at and we implement it well. So I worked with ITS America on the AI implementation guide, and I will just give you a quick overview of that. I really recommend you go out and read it. It's really helpful in terms of looking at ways to implement AI across your workforce. And the core of the guide is these three core functions. So we have the executive function, the operational function, and the delivery function. So as a really quick overview, the executive function, they are the leaders. These are the people that are going to be setting the vision for AI. They really need to clearly communicate that out to people, and they're the people that will be corralling it along. So leaders don't necessarily need to be technical or coders, but they will need to have some AI literacy in place. This is so that they can name the big risks early on, such as the black box, and they can make sure readiness is in place for that. Next is the operational function. So these are the people that build the environment. And I don't just mean the technical environment here, I mean the whole workplace environment. So it's going to be your compliance and governance specialist, it's going to be your security specialist, legal, IT department, your BAU processes. They're the people that really ensure once AI is integrated into your workforce, that becomes a clear part of that process and it can integrate with it nicely as well. And then finally, there's the delivery function. These are the people that make it real. They are your builders, your data scientists, they are your specific technical experts. And they will need to build it with that strategic vision in mind that your executive function has set. They tend to work across the ladder of development, where it starts with the proof of concept, then moves into the pilot stage, and then builds it out at scale. So in terms of early workforce impacts of AI, this is a really good framework and starting point that I really recommend that you go out and read. And it outlines for you ways to reskill, upskill your teams, and ways and measures to put in place to build up trust. So highly recommend it. And I will hand off now to Jennifer Holmes from Accenture. And thank you very much for listening, everyone. Looking forward to answering questions later.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. So hello, so glad to be with you all today. As Virginia said, I lead Accenture's public service, cities, transportation, and infrastructure industry. And I've spent my career working with public service organizations. I'm truly passionate about doing work that matters. Accenture, for those of you who may not be as familiar, is a global technology and consulting company. And we work across a wide range of industries. Every day, we help our clients reinvent their businesses to reach their full potential using technology, data, AI, and new ways of working. And so this question of how we prepare our workforce for the impact of AI is such a relevant one right now, and one that is so many of our clients are grappling with. On the screen here, we have what we call our Reshaping the Workforce framework. And we use this to show various activities and mindsets that allow organizations to capture the value of AI instead of feeling steamrolled by it, which so many feel. This graphic, think of it just like a roundabout intersection. There's no one right place to start, but I'm going to walk through it a little bit like a clock from sort of the 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, et cetera, going around. At the highest level, though, the right side of this circle really talks about the people-oriented things that organizations need to achieve in order to make the most of AI. And then the left side of the circle talks about more of the enabling infrastructure of the organization. What's that? Financial lifeblood, the processes and technology that allow your people to be successful. And I think what's interesting about this is it further reinforces the circular nature of this, is that as we need to think think about how to do these things in order to use AI effectively. But also, as we start to use AI, it can help us do these things more effectively. So the overall takeaway on the big picture of this is really not a step-by-step linear process. Start where you are, do a little bit, assess, adjust, do a little bit more, find ways for AI to help you do this work, assess, adjust, do a little bit more, repeat. And so let me dive in just a little bit more to some of the, again, kind of key principles of this framework. On the right side, leading in new ways. This is really focused on unleashing curiosity, courage, and connection. So even if leaders in your organization don't necessarily know the ins and outs of these new AI tool sets yet, they need to understand and embrace and articulate the value that these tools can bring to the organization. So really that's about kind of leading with an open mindset of curiosity and courage. Build. So this is really thinking about how do we reshape traditional organization boundaries and silos. So it does speak to organizations' design and operating model, but before you get out your pen and start redrawing org charts, really think about the ways and how you change how information is shared. You need to have the right roles and responsibilities, sharing not only the things we may produce, but the information for work to get done and decisions to get made effectively. For AI, data and information is really the fuel that makes it work more effectively for us. And then access and creating talent, innovate in skills, learning, and experience. Our research shows that a culture of learning not only improves an organization's performance, it really improves your people's morale and therefore retention, which is always important when we're thinking about, from a government public service perspective, how do we keep our people engaged and retained? And then delivering continuous change rounds out the right side of this circle. And here it's about creating clarity of purpose, shifting mindsets and behaviors. I think we've all experienced this. We have to stop pretending that change for this program has an endpoint, and then we can all relax and rest easy in the steady state once the change is over. There's no such thing as steady state anymore, and we have to really get comfortable with this idea of continuous change. And that requires having the right change capability built into our organization structure, not something that just stood up once for an individual project and then done. As we move around to the left side of the circle, starting kind of at the top and working down, steering for value. Every organization, whether it is a public organization, government, or private, has a responsibility to ensure that the work they do creates value, whether that's for shareholders or for citizens. And so keep that focus in mind as you make decisions on how to implement AI and the changes that you're going to need to make on how work gets done in the future. Then reinventing processes. AI does actually a better job of replacing tasks than it does people, which is good for all of us, but it does require us to rethink how work gets done, which steps truly require a human touch or truly bring value. So think about how you can break things apart into their Lego bricks is a good sort of way to visualize that. Those Lego brick pieces that you can then better examine what piece can be automated, what can be done by AI, what needs to have human intervention. Then you can reassemble those Lego bricks in a new way that brings new value to the organization. I think building responsible AI, this is really the backbone to all of this that we have to make sure we have. AI learns through reviewing huge amounts of data, and the consequences are serious if we don't control and protect that with responsible AI. So we have got to make sure that through all of this change that we're following the policies and the best practices to protect personal data, customer data, restricted data, et cetera. And then finally, that idea around strengthening the digital and AI core. So this area is primarily about technology and data that underpins the AI tools. But again, not all tools can be modernized at once. It's a continuous effort to thoughtfully modernize your technology systems and tools, which further brings change to ways of working. So again, this is just an iterative framework, but one that we can use as an anchor as an organization really embraces this focus on how work is changing with AI. So with that, I think I'm passing it off to Dara.
Thank you, Jennifer. A lot of what you said really resonated with me. Particularly, it's not important where you start as long as you start leaning in. And that was a little bit about our journey. Hi, everyone. My name is Dara Wheeler. And like Virginia said, I'm the Acting Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer at the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans. I'm going to share a little bit about our journey today. This role that I'm in is relatively new at Caltrans. It was just created in May of this year with the primary purpose of really unifying and elevating the data and AI strategies so that we can maximize innovation while at the same time ensuring the proper governance and accountability across Caltrans. Prior to this role, I had several other roles in the department. I will just share with you briefly. I would manage the research and innovation program at Caltrans. I've also held roles in rail and mass transportation. I have served as the chief of staff to the Caltrans director. I have also spent a dozen years in the transportation planning and worked for 2 California governors' administrations. Okay, so on this slide, you can see, I want to quickly note some of our ongoing efforts as they relate to how we are approaching AI and implications to the workforce at Caltrans. I'm going to start on the left-hand side of this slide, which tells the story of how our journey began. Back in 2023, the California governor had a strong vision for state government leaning into using these new disruptive technologies and created an executive order on specifically generative artificial intelligence. The executive order had around a dozen major deliverables in it, including, and I'm going to name a few of them, a benefits, use cases, and risk report, an inventory of high-risk Gen AI uses, a risk analysis for energy infrastructure. It had new guidelines for Gen AI procurement. It had the development of Gen AI training programs for the state workforce, and it also had academic and stakeholder engagement partnerships, as well as pilot programs and a sandbox environment. All of this was done in a very short timeline, and all of these actions were implemented in around 16 months. And so in California, we had the executive order that really drove leaning into using Gen AI. So that was a lot to share. And before I move down into the 2 use cases on the slide, I want to make sure that I connect how the governor's executive order really impacts the state government workforce. Many, if not all of the provisions in the executive order really have pushed or accelerated how the public sector accepts and it leans into this disruptive technology wave. Some of the workforce protection provisions in the executive order include a human-in-the-loop requirement. We say that a lot. State workforce training and upskilling, and transparency and engagement with employee groups. So essentially, the executive order really protects the California government workforce by slowing down deployment until there's governance, training, and safeguards in place. And also, it protects us by requiring that employees remain in control, that we gain new skills and are directly involved in how Gen AI is introduced across our departments. Okay, so now moving down into the 2 use cases we are testing. Like I mentioned earlier, the executive order asked for state governments to volunteer use cases for testing, and Caltrans submitted 2 that were selected. 5 were implemented as part of the executive order. Caltrans had 2, and we had 2 very large use cases. One of the use cases was on traffic mobility insights, and the second use case was focused on vulnerable road user safety. Both of these use cases were launched back in 2024 through a request for innovative ideas procurement process, and we expect to receive the final Gen AI models around October of this year, so in another couple of months. I really want to acknowledge the hard and innovative work done by Accenture and Microsoft working on the Traffic Mobility Insights project, and Deloitte and Google who are working on the Vulnerable Road User Safety project. So moving to the right side of the slide, I can quickly go through some of the ongoing activities that we are doing right now to elevate our data and AI efforts. Like I mentioned in my intro, Caltrans created the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer role earlier this year, and I was selected to move into that role around the May timeframe. So this role hasn't been in existence very long. We really felt that in order to implement change and prepare the workforce, we needed a dedicated role to architect or to orchestrate the data and AI strategies. Because like Jennifer said too, we all know that without a good data house or without good data strategies, AI outputs and AI outcomes are essentially worthless. So earlier this year, we also updated our acceptable use policy to incorporate new Gen AI provisions. These policies are the core purpose. These policies have a core purpose, and that is to protect the Department of Transportation, to protect our mission, and to protect the public by clearly identifying what is allowed, restricted, or prohibited when using government resources. So this was the policy that we put into place that allowed us to lean in. And then we also stood up a new governance structure, which will help us make those critical strategic decisions on how and when to use these new technologies in the future. We're also conducting stakeholder interviews and developing a Gen AI readiness assessment report, which will help us in developing the future state of this data and AI office. Right now, it's just me. There is a future state. It's going to be more people. It's going to be other pieces in the department that are that relate to data, particularly to support this effort. And we are also developing a data and AI strategic plan and an implementation roadmap. Lastly, we've developed a Gen AI workforce training program, and we're getting close to rolling that out, which includes free training courses and will be part of our LinkedIn Learning State training program. Now, that was actually a lot of information, but I wanted to show you how quickly we've stood up our dedicated focus by leaning into Gen AI and by laying the foundation and preparing the workforce. I will close with state DOTs already see early impacts of AI to workforce showing up in several ways, not through mass job loss, but by reshaping the roles, skills, and workflows that we're currently doing. And now I'd like to introduce and hand it over to Erika Kemp from TxDOT.
Great, thank you, Dara. I want to reiterate, we have the same philosophy that you've heard throughout the presentations today, and that is AI is really an excellent tool to replace tasks or to shift work. It's not intended to replace a workforce. So this conversation today about how we are preparing our workforce is really important. I'd also note that I think Caltrans and TxDOT, by the way, I'm Erika Kemp. I'm with the Texas Department of Transportation, or TxDOT. The way Caltrans and TxDOT are approaching AI are different, but we're very much connected and we're learning from each other. So I think it's really important that there's no specific way to actually go and implement it as long as you have the same factors underneath it. We have not received a governor's order or executive order to do anything. Our governor has signed 2 different bills into place that came out of our legislature. The first was 2 years ago during our legislative session, and that really required us to only provide a report where a human is not in the loop in AI. And I know Dara mentioned that about the term human in the loop. It's very common here in Texas as well. In this last legislative session, which the formal session ended, and the governor has signed the new bill into place, it adds a number of other requirements for us to track related to AI. However, it does not provide necessarily workforce guidance. So we at TxDOT about a year ago had determined that we need an AI strategic plan to help guide the agency forward, but also identify where are the use cases where we could use AI for both agency efficiency or operations and for on system for the transportation parts. So we've been unlocking our workforce potential through our AI strategic plan by using AI to free employees from routine tasks, enabling them to focus on higher value work and innovation. This is one of our guiding principles, is to keep the human in the loop. So all decisions do still need to be reviewed by a human, and then the decision can be executed. Now, over time, we anticipate that our AI is going to learn enough about how the humans made those decisions that we might be able to test, not having a human in the loop, but today a human still needs to be in the loop. We started with policy. It's really important for us, for the staff, to understand what's acceptable. For those of you that were back around when the internet became commonplace in the workplace, we went through a lot of learning curves on what people would do with the internet. And so we understand now the most important thing to start with is what is proper use for AI. So we don't allow for staff to load data from TxDOT into ChatGPT, but we don't tell them that they can't use ChatGPT or other generative AI to build out a Word document. We do request that if they are using it, that they cite that they have used AI so that we are aware of where the information came from. And of course, it's still the human's responsibility to confirm that whatever is developed by the generative AI is actually accurate and does not contain any hallucinations. We've also wanted to continue with our existing processes for how we develop technologies at the agency. So we didn't create a whole new process for AI development. We added a risk component to the existing process. So when you request a technology project as a member of staff, you now list if it has an AI component to it or not. And then it moves over into this other routing once it goes through the standard routing, and there's a risk assessment. If it is a medium to high or a high risk, then it is bubbled up to our administrators, our executive level, so that they can determine if it's really a risk that we want to take. Good news is, so far, all of the AI projects that we've been putting through have been medium or lower. And so we've not had to actually test out whether or not our executives want to support an AI that is in a medium to high or high risk. We also feel it's important that we have a training program. And Dara talked about that as well. And so here at TxDOT, we use LinkedIn Learning to develop our curriculums today. And how we do that is we have a group of people go out and take a variety of courses. We might take 15 to 20 courses, and then we narrow it down to a curriculum of 5 or 6 that we feel actually apply to our agency. And we've shared that out, and that's available for our staff to take, is this grouping of LinkedIn Learning courses. And lastly, our information technology division is now putting in place a sandbox where staff who have the right skill set could develop and pilot an AI product that might be implemented. Now, there's guardrails around this, because one of my concerns was that people will run out, want to learn how to develop AI tools, and then want access to the sandbox when that might not actually be the function of their role today. So there's guidelines around it, certain certifications that you have to have, and the actual access to the sandbox is a limited time frame for you to conduct your pilot. And so we're very excited about all of the things that we're doing here at TxDOT to prepare our workforce, unlock their potential as it relates to AI. Let me now turn it over to Jim Broderick from ITS America.
Thank you, Erika. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you today. Like Erika said, my name is Jim Broderick, and I am on the policy and advocacy team here at ITS America, supporting our legislative and regulatory affairs. I've been with ITS America for about 2 years now, and just graduated from college just over 3 years ago. So I've seen firsthand how AI is impacting the younger generation of our workforce and how people are adapting to changes in the way that people use all types of technology, let alone artificial intelligence. As part of my brief remarks today, I want to briefly discuss the future and kind of looking at the road ahead of where AI may take us in the future, how that may impact our future workforce, as well as how federal policies may be shaping the future of AI adoption and workforce development efforts. So the first pillar or theme that I want to touch on is, meeting people where they are. We've heard some fantastic remarks today from public sector and private sector leaders about how their organizations are using AI and helping agencies think about their workforce development initiatives and AI implementation. And one of the key themes that I want to echo and personally found important is kind of that meeting people where they are and keeping the human in the loop. As AI adoption continues in the transportation sector, we will have to ensure that these new technologies are integrated in a way that is approachable and accessible, and recognize that the technological capabilities are often moving faster than people like you and I can learn and adapt. AI-based tools have improved, from 2 years ago, have improved within those 2 years and have completely even transformed in some cases. And they've even improved and transformed from the past 3-4 months. So it's really important that we're approaching our staff and our workforce in a way that is accessible, in a way that allows people to learn and adapt, as well as, we're cognizant of, the different paces that folks are learning at. So we're not leaving our workforce behind. And that's whether they're out in the field or behind a desk or whatever setting that may be on the back end operations or out in a public-facing setting. It's important to kind of meet people where they are as AI continues to adapt and as technology continues to improve the way we do work. The second part I want to touch on is how we equip the future workforce, ensuring that those in their early career or in entry-level roles are not unfairly displaced because of the use of AI platforms, and that we continue to equip them with the tools necessary to succeed. So that means continuing to invest in skills training for AI and technology in the workplace, creating structure for the use of generative AI or large language models. Kind of like Erika was mentioning, it's important not to outlaw a certain technology or AI use, like Erika was mentioning. Otherwise, you might end up in a situation where people are using them nefariously. So it's important to provide that structure and that opportunity for the workforce to pilot and test these new technologies. As we think about the future workforce as well, it's critical that we continue to support the development of AI training curriculum related to transportation at both the university and technical school level, as well as prioritizing AI and as part of our University Transportation Centers program, as well as the different workforce initiatives that our agencies and private sector companies undertake with folks studying at the university and collegiate level. And this includes, even updating and making sure our civil engineering and transportation programs are updated to include that focus on technology and digital infrastructure, in addition to hard infrastructure. Looking ahead, we at different policies in the federal policy outlook here in Washington, D.C., we expect AI innovation and adoption to accelerate across a variety of sectors, including transportation. We've seen a lot of federal policy directives from the Department of Transportation and other agencies looking at pro-innovation projects, and the White House has even signaled more of a hands-off approach to letting AI flourish throughout the economy. Just last month, we saw that the White House released the AI Action Plan. This is a forward-looking document looking at ways in which the U.S. federal government can help spur innovation in AI adoption. It did include a very hefty portion on workforce development, calling on federal government agencies to prioritize AI skill development as a core objective in workforce development funding streams, promoting skill development in apprenticeships, as well as career and technical education, as well as studying the impact of AI on the job market, including job creation, displacement, wage effects, and how agencies can help support private sector companies fund the rapid retraining for those negatively impacted by AI adoption. And finally, ITS America just last year released AI policy principles looking at the workforce impacts as the key part of our AI policy. And ITS America called on the Department of Transportation and the Department of Labor to study the impact of AI on the transportation workforce, including conducting a skills gap analysis to see where skills exist today and where skills may be needed in the future. And I think, as we continue to see greater AI development and deployment in the transportation field, whether that's on the back end in operations or out front in terms of things like traffic management, autonomous vehicles, it's important to continue to upskill our workforce, emphasize the different training resources and courses that are out there and that still need to be created, and how we can lean on our partners, both in the public and private sector, to help put workers ahead of the curve on AI so that we're truly taking advantage of the encouraging and really great innovations in the transportation technology field. With that, I will turn it back over to Virginia, and I believe we're going to have some Q&A.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the panel for these great presentations. Hold on, I'm trying to unmute. There we go. Thank you to the panel for these great presentations. Wow, it's such an exciting time to be working in transportation and trying to, figure out how to use these new tools in AI to help solve real problems that we're having to make our transportation network safer, operate better, be more efficient, and better serve the needs of the people who need to get from point A to point B, because ultimately that's really what it's all about, as well as safety, making our roads safer and easier to travel on. I would invite everybody on the panel to turn their cameras on. I'm going to give a quick recap of some of the themes that I heard. And while I'm doing that, I would invite the participants on the webinar to use that Q&A box, put in any questions that you might want to ask the panel. We have some questions prepped and ready to go, but we'll be taking a look at the questions that come in and get to as many as we can. I would say this is the first ITS America webinar that I've heard where we're talking about hallucination. So I think that's kind of funny to think about that, but it's true. We need to think about those types of topics and these different things that are going to be happening as we, start to work more and more with AI. One of the themes that I heard over and over is that just to start where you are and really meet the people where they are, to encourage, people to become more familiar. And I also heard that at some AI symposiums earlier this year. This technology is becoming more and more accessible. And so embrace that, really just meet people where they are and get started, get more familiar with it. It's great to see, what's happening with Texas and California and other states as well. We couldn't have everybody on this webinar today, but I know many state DOTs and many public agencies and private companies too are really getting involved with AI. So it's great to see proactive activity across the board in this space and a lot of interest too. Another theme is just the training and learning. So really encouraging everyone to get that experience, keep it accessible, and recognize that things are changing quickly. So you can't just set a policy and, set it and forget it. You got to keep evolving. And with that, though, don't forget to manage risk and to create those policies to manage that risk and to be able to keep your system safe, secure, while also trying to embrace the technologies. So those are my recaps. Let's see. I see we do have a few questions coming in, so thank you for that. Please keep them coming. Our first question to the panel, what are some of the early pain points you've seen organizations encounter when introducing AI into existing operations? And Jennifer, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's actually something that you highlighted, Virginia, at the start of our discussion today, that I think the biggest pain points aren't actually about the technology. They're really about these people and process aspects. And so I think first, it's around trust. Employees are often worrying that AI might be a threat to their job, or so they're hesitant to use it. They're famous for something, they're known for something, and is this going to upend that for them? And so I think it's important for leaders to frame AI as a tool to augment work rather than replace it. And if we don't do that, adoption can really stall quickly, and then that money we've spent implementing AI can get wasted without that anticipated result being realized. And you heard both Dara and Erika mention that human in the loop is key to building that trust and confidence. I think the second's around data challenges. Many transportation organizations are still working on legacy systems, and so plugging AI into these environments isn't necessarily straightforward if data isn't clean and connected. Those insights that we're hoping for can be limited or even misleading, to your point about hallucinations. It's really goes back to that data. And then third, I think it's the skills gap. We know it's not enough to have a handful of AI experts. Frontline staff and managers really need to be trained on how to use these tools responsibly in their daily operations. And so if we don't invest in that training, then our pilots don't scale. We only give a few people that insight. We really can't scale the impact across the organization. And then lastly, it's the change management. We really underestimate how much of a cultural change is required. As I mentioned, change is continuous and constant now. And so we really have to think about how we're managing that constant change and disruption that this is bringing to the ways that we work.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Would anyone else like to chime in on any early pain points?
I'll just reinforce, I think the biggest pain point that we have had has been around the data, right? And it goes back to the very principle of when big data became the hot topic is, garbage in, garbage out. So it's really important to start with good data. And so we're going back through another cleansing exercise, just like we did when we started with big data, and looking at the data to ensure that we're starting from a good point. But overall, I'll be quite honest with you, people are so excited about AI. There's been very quick adoption and excitement about where we can try it, that it's actually more of a slowing down and saying, let's only do so many projects right now and work on the priority projects, make sure those are moving forward correctly. And then we can start layering on more projects. But there's a lot of excitement around AI and what it can do.
Erika, I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's about laying a good data foundation. That's been one of the challenges that we've seen. So not surprising that you've seen it as well. And I guess I'll just mention, since you really did cover the data aspect, another not necessarily a pain point, but a challenge that we've seen is not knowing the cost of these investments. I mean, early on when we jumped in with two very large projects, I don't think that we were thinking through the investments that we would be making. And they're important, but we're going to have to shift things within the organizations and stop or potentially stop doing things in order to make room for those investments. So I'll just cover those two things.
Yeah, I'll jump in and add a couple of points as well. I think they have been covered, but I'll just go into a bit more depth about them, about particularly trust. So trust is one of the big aspects that we tend to find is a big pain point for it. Now, this can be trust from various angles. This could be people mistrusting the system completely and not sure if they trust the outputs because of if it's a GPT, it might be through hallucinations or things like that, or they're not sure about the accuracy of it, and it depends on the context that it's within. And it can also just be trust in terms of, is this going to take my job? Kind of the concern that's happening in that space as well. But there are ways that can be overcome, and that's usually through real clear communication and almost having that early bedding in time, like it's an early provisional pilot period where people can play with it, they understand what the outputs are like from it, before building it up and actually putting it into their BAU processes. So that's one of the ones. And then also to add the data problem. Sometimes there's a big expectation reality shift, and that tends to come down to data. So for example, if we're developing an AI, somebody might come to us and say, we've got all this lovely data, please can you create something for us because we've got this data. But actually the fact is sometimes the data is just the way it's organized and the way it's laid out. It takes a lot of time to go through that and to make it clean enough to be able to go into the AI, that it can take a long time for the AI to actually be developed. So, and also the type of AI you might get out of that data might not be the one that you expected. So there's a bit of a mismatch of that as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to shift over to the next question. And this question, I want to make sure we have time for the younger perspective. So I'm going to go over to the younger. We have a question prepped for that. We want to make sure we have that viewpoint. But I feel like it's often lost in the discussion a bit. So we have a new generation of workforce coming into place. And I'm wondering, how do you anticipate AI adoption affecting the younger generation of workforce in transportation or otherwise? And Jim, we'll start with you for that one, please.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. That's a great question. I mean, I think it already has changed and affected the younger generation of the workforce so far by introducing them kind of the new way of doing things, new way of analyzing, doing tasks, analyzing data. I think as we start to see AI integrated more earlier on in kind of that educational process, then we start to see kind of the younger generation more equipped to handle the challenges, but also the opportunities that AI brings. I think we see that with other sorts of like just the internet in general, or just using things like Microsoft Word. Like as you continue to like show these technologies to people at a younger age, then they're more prepared entering the workforce. I also will say too, kind of as we think about the younger generation, AI adoption in the transportation sector, when we think about, new innovative mobility options, things like autonomous vehicles, this all has, an AI component to them, whether that's kind of the development of them in the back end, and that has the possibility to excite a new generation of workers and young people to the transportation and ITS field, or to any field in general that might be facing, an aging workforce, for example. So it's important to also think about, there's a lot of opportunities in the way that AI is reshaping those kind of cool and new innovative mobility options, and how that can help attract a younger generation of workers.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I think that's so important I see that as a big need. And one thing that excites me about this conversation is being able to attract more people into our industry. So we really do need that. And when people are looking for that good match for their skill sets, into meaningful work and improving people's lives. So, making it more available, what a career in transportation looks like and how to use those technologies. Rebecca, do you have any perspectives that you'd like to share from a younger perspective, like how things are even, across the pond, what you're seeing over there in the UK?
Yeah, so we're seeing that younger people tend to be enthusiastic adopters of it, essentially. It's something that they're taking on quite quickly. They're integrating it into their work patterns, particularly people that are in the workforce already. It's a tool that they're seeing that they could rely on. It's something they can bounce off. It depends what context they're in, but if they're working within analytics or if they're working within writing, they're managing to integrate that into their workflows and to find different ways and means that they can use it. So they're actually quite enthusiastic adopters. On the other level, there is some anxiety around what's going to happen in the future. How is it going to change the workforce? Is it going to take jobs away? I think that can be overcome, though. I think it's something that there might need to be a bit of rethinking around if, for example, some of the lower level graduate jobs do tend to change or do tend to become much more of a kind of critical thinking role or an integration with AI role. That will need to be thought about, and that will need to be making sure that any training pathways that graduates or younger people have, and that becomes integrated into it. So it's a bit of a mix, lots of enthusiasm about it, can see the benefits of it. I mean, you can see as soon as you start using it, you can already see the benefits from it, but then a little bit anxiety on the side about how this is going to change the workforce. How is that going to happen? And how are we going to be managed and supported throughout that?
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. My next question, I kind of want to weave in some of the things I'm seeing in the Q&A, but kind of pointed towards Dara and Erika on the DOT perspective. So can you talk a little bit about the steps that you're preparing, that you're doing to prepare the workforce on the future of AI? Also, maybe touch on the willingness of the workforce to engage in any kind of training. There's also some comments in here about, the LinkedIn tools, as well as how what you're doing might impact regular workforce processes. So I don't know if you could just take a couple moments to respond to any of that. I know that's quite loaded, but whatever sounds best to you. Dara, we'll start with you, please.
Sure, that's a great question. So what are we doing from a state DOT's perspective to prepare the workforce? One thing that I think that Erika would also say is, we can't do this alone. So you've got to have strong networks out there to inform, and even engagement with other state DOTs, learning from each other, like Erika said. I call that the R&D method. It's the rip off and duplicate. We love to take from others what's a best practice and what works. But we're also really leaning on industry and academia to help guide us with best practices and even supplement some of the knowledge gap that we don't have. State governments have always been challenged with taking on risk. associated with change, and we're not good at it. We're not very, risk, forward. But our partners can help us in that aspect, and because they already have the knowledge and they can help bring us along. Down the road, I think that we're going to have to recruit and develop new talent, and upskill the existing talent, and even augment some of the talent with that outside knowledge until we become proficient. And that kind of reminds me of one of a great quotes: "We're greater together than we are by ourselves." So we're going to have to rely on our partners and industry and academia to help bring us along. I'll just stop with that.
So I'll add on to that. I mean, we have great partners in academia as well. And I think one of the areas, building on what Dara's talking about, is that there's a variety of different skill sets that are needed for any organization to be successful. So up front, I'm not an engineer. I tease people often about being the most risk tolerant person at TxDOT, and that scares people. But they need people like us, the panelists on this call, many of you who are attending this call, because you are risk tolerant, you are an early adopter, you are excited about what it can do for safety and transportation. And so I think that's the real key. But it also comes down to leadership. I have to commend TxDOT's leadership, Caltrans leadership, for standing in front of everyone within the agency and accepting AI and saying, how can we use it to improve safety? So I think that's really key for our success, is that our executive director, our deputy executive directors, our other members and directors within administration were very supportive of our strategic plan and implementing it to the point that we presented it to the commission. They were very excited. And that, I think, is really what drives organizational change, as Jen was talking about earlier. When the leaders say, this is okay, go explore, tell us what we should be doing, and then listening, right? So we're listening to our districts. What is working for them? What are they interested in? And that, I think that really helps it. I want to go back to Jim real quick on the different generations. We need, again, in order to be a successful organization, we need that influx of the younger generations with these skills. We had an intern, a high school student intern, who could code AI and a chatbot for us. And that's just amazing that they come ready with these skills. And we need to have those use cases ready for them to come and then get excited about transportation, about the industry. If we start early, right, when they're middle school and high school, we'll see more move into the transportation field, whether they're an engineer or they're a business major like myself, or I've got communications people and liberal arts degrees on my team. We need all those skills, and we need the enthusiasm and the excitement of the younger generations.
Great points, Dara and Erika. Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question. So we'll handle it a little bit popcorn style. I want to make sure I hear from everyone on the panel for this last question. And it kind of, that was a good transition, Erika, and kind of feed into it. But there was something in the Q&A too that I'm building from. But how are those less obvious roles, including non-technical teams, how are they involved with driving growth in the AI workforce? Maybe Jennifer, can I start with you? And I would add, Jennifer, if you want to talk a little bit about your human factors work, because that was something in preparing for this. I was just really, it hit me. It was just astounding to think about how the organizational change is so important to all of this too. So
yeah. So I think that if we think that AI is just a technology change, as it's been mentioned before, I think that's really falling short of what this is. I think that it's really the idea of true business users. We've talked about use cases, the day-to-day way in that you use your job, that you do your job. There is opportunity to bring AI into that, to improve your productivity, to be able to go through large amounts of information and get insights that you can do something with. And so it's not something that is just a technology skill. I think the power in AI comes when it is being paired with the roles that people are in today, their business focus, whether you're an engineer or you're setting strategy for an organization or you're drafting communications to go out to the public or within your organization. No matter what that role is, there is something that you can bring in, and only you know the focus of your job. And so I think it's about upskilling so that you know how to use the tool, how to write a good prompt, to get the AI to respond in a way with you to help you do your work. And we need to really think about it like that. It's not just a technology tool that only IT people know how to use. It is really something that's a business tool. And we need to be thinking about, again, how are we giving people the comfort level and the skills to take it and apply it to the thing that they instinctively know how to do. So that, I think that's really again, a way to think about the skills that are necessary and the applicability to anything that anyone does with the way that we can be using AI as a partner in what we do.
Okay. So really thinking about it as a business tool and connecting with the business operations folks to loop them in. Okay, who wants to go next? Again, how are those non-obvious and non-technical teams driving growth in the AI workforce? Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. I think one of the things that popped in my head is, I'm not a technical person. I don't have an engineering background or ITS specific background technically, but I think one of the things is non-technical users can use, large language models and AI tools to help kind of generate ideas and bounce ideas off of it. That's something that I have found personally very useful. I'm not a very creative person, so it's helpful to have kind of like something to like generate ideas around. So I think, whether it's in like a communications type of role, a planning role, just strategy even, I think kind of in that non-technical setting, I think it's been really helpful to have an AI tool that we can use and incorporate that will help, generate ideas about, maybe a different way or thinking outside of the box instead of just copying what we may have done, a year ago.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Good point. Rebecca, what do you think? What are you seeing as far as less obvious or non-technical folks driving growth for AI?
Well, we're finding that people in non-technical roles and the more BAU roles are actually the best testers for AI. They are the people that are working with the outputs of it, looking at ways that they can integrate into the business, looking at different methods and means that they can do it as well. So they are some of the best testers to try and find those ways for growth. And then there's also the fact that, working with AI, it does require you to have a really good context of what your subject is and your specialism, and also a verification at the end. So having the person almost having it some human machine teaming happening and working together with the AI in order to get to find better outputs, to find different ways and different mechanisms you can put in place.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, panel. I think we're going to wrap now. We're about out of time. I just have a couple of updates that I want to share before we finish, but let's give everyone on the panel a round of applause and thank them for their time today, for being here with us to share your insights and great information. So thanks, everybody. Next week is the World Congress, the ITS World Congress in Atlanta. I know there's a lot of buzz around that, and I look forward to seeing many of you there. We will have a workforce development workshop happening on Thursday. So stick around for Thursday workshop. It's from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. and it will be interactive. So you'll have a chance to share your ideas and really help to process everything that you've seen and done in the whole week of the ITS World Congress. So please join us on Thursday morning. Also, I wanted to give another reminder that we will be having our Workforce Development Community of Practice meeting on September 25th. In the chat, or you just contact membership at itsamerica.org to get on that list if you don't have that invite. And then lastly, the recording and these meeting materials will be posted on the ITS America website once they're ready. So if you want to revisit this or have any questions for any of us, please reach out and we'd be happy to answer this. I believe we will try to get back to individual folks about the Q&A too, probably more on a one-on-one basis. But All right. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you being part of this webinar today, and let's keep the conversation going. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.